Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Today's topic is a very weighty one. It's a heavy topic that has the attention of people around the world, literally people around the world. And it's on Palestine. This is the focus of today's broadcast once again, but this time we are going to be talking about the Palestinian struggle through an African-American lens. For those of us who belong to my tribe, this is a very important conversation. Our guest for today's broadcast will be Amir Abdulmalik Ali, a well-known and respected Oakland, California-based leader. No stranger to Salam Media. He's been on with us before. And also our brother Malik Aziz, based in Florida. He is probably best known within the Muslim community as the founder of a well-known Facebook group known as the Muslim Street. Now, before we bring these two esteemed brothers on, I want to share just a little bit of information to lay the foundation for the conversation to follow. UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, has issued a report titled, Gaza is being strangled. Gaza is being strangled. Over 7,000 Palestinians thus far have been killed. Over 7,000. All right, most of them women and children. At least 17,000 injured. At least 1.1 million displaced out of a population of 2 million people. At least 12 hospitals have had to stop operations. There's insufficient food, water, and fuel. 42 UNRWA shelters have been damaged, with 7 taking direct hits. Again, there have been so many violations of international law in this assault on Gaza that has taken place since October 7th. There have been so many violations. And this is one of those violations. These are clearly marked United Nations shelters that should not be the subject of targets. But, 7 have taken direct hits and many others have been damaged. 57 UNRWA personnel have been killed. The situation is dire. What's needed is an immediate ceasefire and continuous aid to the internally displaced refugees of Gaza. This is what UNRWA is calling for. And this call has been amplified by many important voices around the United States and around the world, different parts of the world. With that said, I want to bring before we bring the brothers on, I want us to see a bit of video. This video of a young lady. I'm not quite certain, but this may be her first exposure to this decades-long conflict, but she had a very interesting, to say the least, reaction to what she has witnessed, along with so many others. Let's see that piece of video, Brother Sadiq.
Can we talk about the Palestinian faith real quick? Because it's unlike anything I've ever seen. I have quite literally seen videos of people who have lost everything, even their children, and they are holding their dead children in their arms and still thanking God. Still asking God to take care of their children from there. Meanwhile, the people who claim to be of faith and are still backing this genocide could never. You're a bunch of lying assholes. You're the same people who love to soak up the book of Job when you're in church. You love hearing that story. You feel so inspired by Job losing everything and still thanking God. Meanwhile, the Palestinians are literally a population of Jobs right now.
عشان اولادي كلهم استشهدوا وزوجتي يا عم ما ضلليش الا ولد كان واقف على باب المخبز يجيب خبز.
So earlier today I made a video saying how impressed I was with Palestinian faith, because it just seems that Palestinians have this ironclad faith even in the face of losing quite literally everything. And I was also curious as to how even in facing genocide is Palestinian faith so strong. And so I decided to go on Scribd to see if there was an audiobook version of the Quran. There is. And so I started listening. There is no introduction. I even thought that I accidentally skipped over something, because it gets straight to it. Like, there is no once upon a time. There is no in the beginning. There is none of that. It was like, all right, if you do this, then this happens. If you do this, like, it gets straight into it. And by the way, if you are Muslim, I hope I'm not being disrespectful. This is just my experience in reading the Quran for the first time. But I found some things very interesting. Like, first it said, oppression is worse than murder. And I was like, that's a word. And then there was a part in there that I was surprised about. I don't know why I thought it was going to be like the Christian religion where if somebody slaps you, you got to offer your other cheek and everything, because that always bothered me. In the Quran, it says if somebody fights you, you fight them back. Like, if whatever they do to you, you do to them. And I was like, absolutely.
Okay, without any further ado, we want to bring our brothers on. Amir Abdul Malik Ali and Brother Malik Aziz. Assalamu alaikum, brothers.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It is my pleasure to have both of you on with us today for this very important discussion. Like I said, the folks know you pretty well, Abdul Malik Ali, because you have been on with us on a number of occasions. This is our brother Malik Aziz's first journey with us. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to share some background on you with the link that we send out later for folk who don't see it live to enjoy this broadcast. Brother Malik, let's hear from the two of you. Let's begin this conversation with the two of you sharing some perspective both on the title of today's conversation and also any thoughts, reactions you might have to what the sister had to say in that short video.
Yeah.
Start with you, brother Malik. Yes.
Start with me? Okay. When I first saw that video, it literally prompted me to make a phone call to you because it gave me goosebumps. Part of the goosebumps, obviously, her emotional response. Yeah. But reading that, it let us know, at least those of us who are leaders, those of us who are revolutionaries, that we can win. Mm-hmm. What we saw with her is the awakening of the masses of the people. The grassroots are waking up. Over this issue, it has sparked literally an international enlightenment around oppression Western colonialism vis-a-vis Israel, and in addition to that, where the masses see their place in it, and they're responding to it. So that was one piece of it. The other piece of it is when you continue, and the West knows this, they saw it during 9/11. If you falsely continue to poke the bear of Islam, you're simply going to convert more people to Islam. So as you heard her, I went and got a Quran, so this is significant. It's significant too, as we go to the other part of your question, through the lens of the Black struggle, is that the general ordinary masses, the Black people in this country, and particularly in the United States, and I would suggest that this is going on all over the world, over this issue of oppression, we have connected ourselves to the visual oppression that we've seen by the West through using American weaponry to expand the Zionist project, to cover down on the Zionist project. And they are waking up to it. And once you wake them up, they will not go back to sleep. So this is a beautiful moment. The actual Black struggle through mass protests will connect themselves eventually to that Palestinian struggle. And I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of my thoughts around that a little later. Go ahead, Brother Abdul Malik.
Brother. It's nice to meet you too, brother. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad you used that piece. I'm glad you started off with that piece. Because one of the things that we've been talking about is that the whole aspect of istiqamah, that istiqamah, of course, means to not swerve, to not give in, to not be broken, to be constant. And one of the things we've been talking about is that istiqamah, if you look in our history, is a powerful form of dawah. That there have been people in our history, including Umar, who came to Islam as a result of seeing Muslims stand strong and not be broken. And people talk about when Umar saw his sister bleed, that's what cooled him out. But what actually cooled him out was, although his sister was bleeding, that she said, "I'm a Muslim, and I'm not going to stop being a Muslim. Do whatever you want." That disposition right there, her willingness to go with whatever she had to go through and not be broken, is what caught Umar's attention. So when you show this piece by this sister here, and she was marveling off of the faith of the Palestinians, she was marveling off of their istiqamah, that they're not going to be broken, that they're not going to swerve, they're not going to give in, they're going to be constant. And what did it do? It served as a form of dawah. As Brother Malik said, that she went and she got a Quran. And I like to put it in this way. Islam is like a ball. If you bounce it, it comes up so high. But if you slam that ball to the ground, it comes up higher and faster, alluding to what Brother Malik said, that if you leave Islam alone, it's coming up. If you try to slam Islam to the ground, it's coming up higher and faster. And so this is what we're seeing with our beautiful brothers and sisters in Gaza. They're teaching all of us Iman and how to have faith. And lastly, I heard one of these, so-called Afrocentrists, self-described Prince of Pan-Africanism, say that what's happening in Palestine has nothing to do with Black people. It's very difficult to be patient with people who think they know more than Malcolm, particularly on issues like this, right? And Malcolm was very clear on what our position should be regarding Palestine and regarding Zionism. And the letter that he wrote, Zionist Logic, he wrote that he submitted that to the Egyptian Gazette, September 1964, after having come back from Gaza, after having visited Gaza. And so our leadership has been clear that what our position should be on Palestine as Black people. We cannot support an oppressor against another oppressed people. That's selling out. If we support an oppressor against another oppressed people, we forfeit our rights for justice. And so this is a issue that is extremely important, not just for Muslims, but for Black folks as well.
Absolutely. I'm so glad, brother, that you made reference to the contradictions that some of our so-called super Black-minded thinkers and activists out there had. Just not the majority, but
Mhm.
some of them, and among them those who have, unfortunately, within our circles, within some of our circles, they received a larger profile than they should have. I'll put it that way. And I know who you were referring to when you referenced this individual. I won't even mention his name either. But but it's an important point for us to take to heart. The fact that, I often say when I'm speaking about the Palestinian issue, for me, there is no other group of people in the world that's going through struggle that is closer to me as an African American and my people's struggle than the Palestinians. Um, I mean, there's just so much for me I can relate to. And with that being said, and this is closely related. Do you brothers remember that visit? That first, I don't know if he paid more than one visit. I can just recall one right now. Visit that Nelson Mandela paid to the United States after he was released after 27 years of political imprisonment.
Yes.
Remember that visit that he paid to New York City in that town hall meeting that was presided over by Ted Koppel.
Yes.
And do you remember that individual that stood up in the audience took issue with some of the folks he was associating himself with?
Yes.
And Mandela's response.
Yes. I remember that, and that it was so on point. And you know what? And I don't think the United States apologized for designating Nelson Mandela as a terrorist. I don't think they apologized for designating the ANC as a terrorist organization, right? And so now we're supposed to believe them today when they tell us who's a terrorist organization, who's a terrorist and who's not. We're supposed to believe them now, right? Yeah. And so they should have apologized to Nelson Mandela for that, right? But I do remember that, right? And he was saying in so many ways, like, these people supported us. They supported us, right? And no one's going to tell us who to align ourselves with and who's not to align ourselves with. So I do remember that. It was beautiful exchange.
Yeah, and Hajj Saalakhan is one thing to point out during this era, as we saw mass struggle against the apartheid system in South Africa, which eventually led to its overthrow, is that it was the United States government and Israel on the UN Security Council that voted in support of it of apartheid South Africa. Right. Nelson Mandela hits his feet into the shores.
Exactly.
This is the construct of white supremacy. Zionist state feeds into that, and they lock hands. And I think that when we understand that, and Nelson Mandela surely understood when he responded on that Ted Koppel platform, that your enemies, Mr. and Mrs. West, are not our enemies.
Right? Exactly.
Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution in the same vein. That I'm sorry, as he talked about the PLO and Yasser Arafat at that time. So this is being literally permeated through mass consciousness, right?
Yes.
Toure, and I'll leave it with this, said before his passing in the mid-90s that the duty of the conscious is to raise the level of the unconscious. This is happening right now.
That's right.
All over the country, from people who are generally apolitical, don't even understand the whole thing that you and I and Brother Abdul Malik understand, but they're down with this Palestinian struggle. This is a problem for the West. This is a problem for the construct of white supremacy as we move forward. It's coming down.
It sure is. Right. And how ridiculous would that be for Black people not to support another people who are fighting against white supremacy?
Yes.
Come on. They're fighting against white supremacy, and we don't involve ourselves in that. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad Abdul Malik again to Hajj's point brought up this Prince of Pan-Africanism, who doesn't even have an organization. Okay, who doesn't even have international context. when Malcolm, who was a true Pan-African,
Thank you.
Nkrumah was a true Pan-African. Du Bois and Padmore at the Fifth Pan-African Congress, excuse me. These were true Pan-Africans, right? They had organizations, they had institutions, right? So this YouTube, this social media invention of the quote unquote activists, they're not activists at all. And it just goes to show you, right? So as we look further down this struggle, in order for the Palestinians to win, it's going to take Pan-African struggle and Pan-Arab struggle coming together, just as we saw at the Bandung Conference, just as we saw in 1961 with the Casablanca Bloc, with Mohammed V and Nkrumah and the rest of them getting together, Gamal Abdel Nasser. This is what will lead to the independence of Palestine. And so we have to stay on this track, right? The track about Arabs and the Arab bloc, and revisiting what happened in Casablanca in 1961, the Bandung Conference, and the non-aligned movement. We have to bring these ideas back together, right?
That's right. That's right.
Because those are the tracks that we were able to bring down colonialism in the first place, and this is what they fear. They fear the Arab and their struggle coming together with the Black struggle.
Yes.
This is an element and a recipe that they do not want, right?
Exactly.
Because we understand that it's one. Right?
Exactly.
And I often think about, staying for a moment with South Africa's, the anti-apartheid South African struggle, and the affinity it had with the Palestinian and the Cuban struggle. On Palestine, I remember some years back, and this was before the change took place in South Africa, some years back, one of the oldest churches in the community, in the United States, the Old South Church in Boston, they had an annual conference. I don't know if they still have it, but there was an annual conference on Palestine that they would have at that church. I forget the organization that hosted the conference, but I attended 2 years back to back, and both of those years, the keynote speaker for this it was a 2-day conference. Was the late South African Emeritus Archbishop Desmond Tutu. All right, he was the keynote speaker both years that I attended. I will never forget, brothers. And in fact, this along with Grace Hossel's writings, Journey to Jerusalem and Prophecy and Politics. This, along with Grace Hossel's writings, was what really awakened me to this phenomenon that's called Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism, and how strong it is in the West. In fact, some might argue that it is even stronger than it is the strongest component of the Israeli lobby, the Zionist lobby, Christians. And anyway, I remember this protest that took place. It was a real awakening for me. I remember there was a lunch break during the first day's proceedings, and when we came outside, there was this huge demonstration in front of the church, and the signs really caught my attention. These were Zionists, both Jewish and Christian Zionists, and one of the most offensive placards that I saw, enlarged placards that I saw, was the image of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a quote of his expressing his solidarity with Israel. And clearly, I mean, this was early on in this quote was early on in Dr. King's struggle. I am quite certain Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was assassinated in 1968, would have a very different view.
Yeah.
A very different view if he saw what this monster had become. But again, it gets back. I want to go back to that conference. How imagery, black imagery, is used to try to justify the unjustifiable, and also, how prominent figures. I mean, Nelson Mandela was a warrior who didn't turn the other cheek. I'm not. The impression I have is that Desmond Tutu was along the lines of Dr. King. He was, attached to creative nonviolence. This was a nonviolent struggle, but still, he was not able to avoid the castigation and the vile castigation of these Zionist, operators that were outside of that church. I mean, the things that they said, not just about the conference, but about different people that were addressing the conference, including Desmond Tutu, who by this time had won a Nobel Prize. It was very revealing. And again, it was, for me, I had already read, I think, one of the books of Grace Halsell, but that visual that I witnessed myself when I came out of that church that day was, it was just a lesson in and of itself, how strong the Christian Zionist lobby is in the United States in support of apartheid Israel. And their position is, we will take no quarters. We will attack whomever it is, in whatever way we need to, in order to put forward this demonic agenda of ours.
Right.
And Hajj, and I'd like to have Abdul Malik respond to the statement I'm getting ready to make and get his viewpoint and perspective on this. Married to that Christian Zionist relationship to Israel is their control of the Congressional Black Caucus in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
And the Black comprador class, the Black petty bourgeoisie political class, mayor of New York City, Cory Booker, when Hamas, quote unquote, launched the missiles, he was out jogging in Tel Aviv, and they rushed him with his security into his 5-star hotel so they can get him on it. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They have bought for the Congressional Black Caucus, and this is problematic. So I'd like to hear Brother Abdul Malik kind of expand on his perspective of this and the significance of this Black comprador class getting in the way of and trying to control the thought of what we now see, a mass movement going amongst not only the general Black masses in this country vis-a-vis this issue in Palestine, but also thought leaders from the anti-Zionist movement within the own Jewish community.
That's right.
Exactly.
Like Dr. Amy, people like Dr. Finkelstein. So I'd like to hear your thoughts.
And there was a huge demonstration in New York City. Primarily, it was organized and primarily composed of members of the Jewish community. It was huge. But go ahead, Brother Abdul Malik Ali.
Exactly. No, that's real. This is why politicians are not our leaders. They're not our leaders. Politicians are not our leaders. And our most powerful leaders have always been outside the system. So if we're going to play that politics game, it's got to be with a proper understanding, a proper frame of mind. They're not our leaders. The whole electoral process has been so co-opted, you know what I'm saying, by the corrupt rich, that as soon as our people become politicians, they become neutered, they become weakened. An example will be like Warnock from Atlanta. If you check out Warnock, I was very sad to see him become a senator, because before he became a senator, he was bringing it. And he was coming at the apartheid state of Israel. He was coming at Israel hard, and he was in the pulpit. He was in Dr. King's pulpit, and he was coming hard.
Right.
They went ahead and made him a senator, and now he's weak. Now he's been neutered. Now he's been compromised. And that's an example of why our politicians are not our leaders. They can have a little role to play, but they're not our leaders, right? And so I think that's emblematic of that. And lastly, this Christian Zionism thing, this connection with the Zionist Jews, it's a match made in hellfire, because these Christians actually believe that when Jesus comes back, peace be upon him, he's going to kill the Jews. He's going to kill the Jews. This is actually what they believe, right?
That's right.
So they want Jesus to hurry up and come back so these Jews can be killed. And they're aligning themselves with these Jews. So as I said, it's a match made in hellfire.
Yeah,
It's not going to
Right.
go anywhere.
I mean, that gospel of dispensation and centered around the rapture. Yes, it's so twisted. I mean, because they do believe that, there's going to be this conflagration that has to erupt from the Middle East, from the Holy Land. That's where it's going to begin.
Yes.
When it happens, the only ones who will be saved will be Christians, and not all Christians, the Christians who believe as they believe.
Exactly.
Only the Christians who believe as they believe will be the ones.
Exactly.
And the Jews who are right now their allies, who don't convert,
Yes.
they will be destroyed along with everyone else. I mean,
They'll be destroyed.
So twisted.
So Hajj, back in September, during Labor Day weekend, I think it was like the 3rd or the 4th, the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, had 10 members that were gathered in Jerusalem by Bibi Netanyahu, who, oh, by the way, though he was born in Israel, he was raised in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
In a house that was
Yes, he was.
ultra Zionist, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought these 10 key members. I think Meeks was one, Hakeem Jeffries another, along with 7 or 8 others, in order to do what? Use AIPAC, which is their political wing here in the United States, their domestic wing, to continue to control the Congressional Black Caucus and the Black Petty Bourgeoisie. That's problematic.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I do hope that the viewers, especially my African American brothers and sisters, and especially those who are supposed to be conscious, are really paying close attention to what has already been said concerning our our African American political leadership. Coming back to the here and now, if I'm not mistaken, we are right now in the 118th Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Of this Congress, well, all right, I don't know how many black senators there are, but we do know 2 of them. We know Cory Booker out of New Jersey, which has a pretty large he has a large African American constituency, and also a sizable Muslim constituency.
Yes.
Cory Booker does.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I would guesstimate, being that he is Reverend Warnock, coming out of Atlanta, Georgia, and coming out of Ebenezer, his primary constituency is African American. And I would imagine that also within that constituency, there are a significant number of Muslims who are part of his district. All right. Now, with that being said, a resolution was just recently passed. In the Senate, 97-0.
Yes.
And immediately when I saw the numbers, I wondered, okay, subhanAllah, you mean to tell me these 2 African American senators with sizable black and Muslim constituencies couldn't bring themselves to do the right thing on this resolution?
And then you go back, and then you go back to the CBC.
CBC as a whole. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
CBC on I think it was October 15th issued a major press October 5th, a major press release in support of Israel. And they mentioned the Palestinians in that press release.
Right.
Andre Carson, go to his webpage. A Muslim out of Indianapolis. in support of Israel, didn't even mention the Palestinians. I mean, this is incredible.
Right.
You know, so we have to continue to expose this comprador class, the black petty bourgeoisie, in front of the people, in order that when they come around us again, when it's time for voting, we will make them feel the pain.
Right.
And they have to understand this.
That's
70% of Muslims, as a general whole in the United States, election of 2020, voted for President Biden, who has to be one of the most vocal Zionist presidents that we've ever seen.
Going all the way back to when he was a U.S. senator. He self-identified, I am a proud Zionist.
Proud Zionist.
A proud Zionist. And he has shown himself to be. Yes, I mean, this man, if he is not, if Muslims have the balance of power in the presidential elections of 24 and he ends up being reelected, shame on us.
Shame on us. Yeah. 2 days ago, a UN Security Council resolution 771 voting on a ceasefire. 45 nations abstained. 2 said they would not support it. You know who those 2 was? Israel.
That's right. That's right.
So to your point, Hajj Saalakhan, if the Muslims go back out and vote, playing this game of democratic power politics, as we see Muslim activists vis-a-vis Palestine, the Palestinian issue in this country have played. I mean, that's been the agency, either democratic power politics or nonprofit politics, in order to appeal to the feelings of the American public that they will not support the Zionists. That doesn't work. I mean, we have to move toward 1961 and 1955 and the Bandung Conference in order to solve this problem. Well, that's where our leverage is, right? Our leverage is Arab Pan-African unity. There's no question about it. You know, and I hear the voices of Linda Sarsour, and I feel for them. Rashida Tlaib, and we know them personally, right? But they have to shift. They have to shift over to working with Black revolutionary Muslim thought leaders like the brothers who are on this panel, and there's others. And then there's others like Omali Yeshitela with Thru. There's others like Darola Ben Ofi Tahaka, who has the National Black United Front. These are the people that should be working with.
And I think too, they have to be honest about something. Remember, brothers, during the last George Floyd uprising, and when the uprising was going on, you had politicians and celebrities talking like they never talked before. I mean, they was coming with things like they never came before, right? Because of what was happening in the streets.
That's right.
They have to be honest by saying they're only as effective at they're only as effective within the system as what's going on outside of the system. If there's things happening in the streets, you know what I'm saying, the uprising occurring and so on and so forth, then they can move better. They can move with more strength. But if we don't make them do it, as brothers alluding to, if we don't make them do it, they're going to get bought out. They're going to get weak. They're only as strong as those of us outside the system, right? That's how it works. And lastly, one day we're going to be faced with the same test. And the test is this: of people who've been oppressed, now they're not oppressed anymore, and they have some power. Let's see what they do with it. The Israelis have flunked. They get an F minus. They were an oppressed people. Then they got some power. And then they became like their oppressor. They're the new Nazis. One day we're going to be faced with that same test. Black people, Muslims, we're going to be faced with that same test, that having had been oppressed, right, exploited, degraded, so on and so forth, we're going to get to a point, inshallah, where we have power, and then we're going to be tested to see what we do with it. Are we going to be standard bearers for justice, or are we going to become like the people who we replaced? They flunked, and we can't go with them. We can't go with them.
This is such a significant point that Abdul Malik makes. It almost gave me goosebumps and the hair to stand up on my arms. Just a anecdotal story real quick to support what he said. In 1991, I make my first trip to Africa. a meeting with the PNDC. They're transitioning to democratic elections under General Rawlings the next year. And I'm presenting a program around dual citizenship, right? So they met with me, and I stayed there for over a month, facilitated by the great Akbar Muhammad. When I was over there in the streets of Accra, which is not like the developed streets of Accra now, it was really like I stepped into 1957 at their independence. I ran into some brothers and sisters from Detroit. They were from New York. They came over when the Nkrumah was handing out extending the olive branch of dual citizenship to the African diaspora and those who suffered because of the European slave trade. And so they came over there during the 1960s and early 1970s. When I saw, to Abdul Malik's point, when I saw their behavior as they related to the indigenous people over in Ghana, brother, they acted like, white people. All right, we've been oppressed here, but now we get to oppress the Africans. And I checked them on it hard. So this is the issue that Abdul Malik brings up. How are we going to act?
Yeah.
Are we going to act like them? This is very, very critical.
It is critical. And something, I want to put something on this on the record before this broadcast ends. I knew that this hour is going to fly by fast, given the nature of our conversation and who's involved. But I wanted to, there's been a tremendous amount of pressure exerted on individuals that have different degrees of prominence within the public square, from politicians all the way down to influencers and entertainment and various other fields. And what and coupled with that pressure is the demand, and it's not implied. It is, it's in your face. Are you going to condemn Hamas? Are you going to condemn Hamas? SubhanAllah. When this crisis that we're seeing right now, that has just deepened to the point of genocide in Gaza, is something that didn't just begin, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. This is something that has been going on for decades. And this senator, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley. He was the one that introduced the resolution that had trouble the first go round, but then it ended up passing again by a vote of 97-0 on the second go round. He posited the resolution as a response to hate speech. All right, directed an anti-Semitic hate speech. Now, what I did in response to that in one of my releases is I was subhanAllah, I was able to pull together some and I forgot to plug this up. I just had a little mishap here. Didn't realize my battery was this low. But I want to share something from this information I pulled together from a number of releases I caught in social media land that I think folk should bear in mind before they have this knee-jerk, largely rooted in fear, reaction to, are you going to condemn Hamas? The words, these are all prominent Zionists in the apartheid Zionist state of Israel. First begins with the words of Simcha Rothman. These are direct quotes. He said religious Zionists, he's from the religious Zionist party, and he's a member of the Israeli Knesset. He said, quote, my goal is the destruction of Hamas. There is a simple test for this. With God's help, if a Jewish child can walk alone through Gaza, if Gaza will exist, end quote. Then we have the words of Maya Golan, Israel's Minister of Women's Affairs. She said, quote, I want to tell the world what they have long known about me in Israel. I don't care about Gaza. I literally don't care about Gaza. They can go swimming in the sea, end quote. Then we have the words of Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He said, quote, there will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting animal people, and we are acting accordingly, end quote. And what he was calling for and what we have seen is collective punishment, which is a violation of international law. Then we have the quote of Tali Gottlieb. Tali Gottlieb. Now, this is another female Likud party politician in the Knesset. She said the following, quote, Jericho missile, doomsday weapon. That's my opinion. And she's talking about nuclear, I think a nuclear strike. That's my opinion. Powerful rockets to be fired without borders. Gaza to be smashed and razed to the ground without mercy, end quote. And then there's Ezra Yakin, a veteran of the Israeli army, in a speech to Israeli reservists, said the following as they were preparing for what is supposed to be a ground invasion. He said, quote, wipe out their families, their mothers, and their children. These animals must not be allowed to live any longer, end quote. And then Ariel Kalner, a Likud party politician, he said, quote, now there is only one goal, Nakba, expulsion of the Palestinians. Nakba in Gaza that will dwarf the Nakba of 1948, end quote. And then we have the words of Daniel Hagari. He's the army spokesman. He said, quote, we are dropping hundreds of tons of bombs on Gaza. The focus is on destruction, not accuracy, end quote. And then Yitzhak Herzog, the president of Israel, who said, quote, it is an entire nation who are responsible. This rhetoric about civilians supposedly not being involved is absolutely untrue. We will fight until we break their backs, end quote. And then, not to be undone, this is a very brief quote from a all too familiar rhetorical speech from Benjamin Netanyahu, who said, we will turn Gaza into an island of ruins. And subhanAllah, this is what they are doing. Mm-hmm. This is what they have done. They have turned Gaza into an island of ruins. I'm subhanAllah, looking at the time. There was this other video that I wanted to show, but we'll forgo that, inshallah ta'ala. We'll forgo that second video because it is a little longer than the first, and while it is thought-provoking, it is I want to give you brothers an opportunity to be able to share some closing thoughts. We got we got about 7 minutes left in the broadcast, and we're going to close out with a piece of video, inshallah ta'ala, after I sign off. But what would you like to say to the viewing and listening audience? And I'd like for you to respond to this question in two parts, brothers. What would you like to say to your African American brethren, to the members of our tribe, and especially to prominent members of our tribe? And then what would you like to say to the folk outside of our tribe concerning this crisis, this issue that is, in the face of the entire world? And thirdly, 3 parts. Thirdly, what would you say to? Well, let's go with those 2. Go ahead. Who's first?
The statements that you read was indicative of what happens when you take the concept of chosen people and the concept of white supremacy and you fuse them together. You get a serious arrogance. To Black folks, I would say that we cannot, as I said earlier, we cannot side with an oppressor against another oppressed people. That's the ultimate expression of selling out. And if we side with an oppressor against an oppressed people, and these oppressed people are fighting against white supremacy, and we side with the oppressor, then we forfeit our rights to justice. We have to come, generally speaking, Allah is clear. Allah says the way of blame is not against those who defend themselves as a result of being oppressed. The way of blame, Allah says, is against the oppressor. So we're not going to let them cause us to put focus on blaming the victim. We're not going to put focus on the effect. We're going to put focus on the cause. And basically what that entails is saying that straight up, Hamas are not terrorists. They're freedom fighters. International law is clear. And occupied people cannot be called terrorists. And occupied people have a right to resist their occupation violently or non-violently. This is international law. And an occupier cannot claim self-defense. And so once we stand on this international law, we stand on it. We don't budge on it. And pretty soon their narrative, as we're seeing every day, their narrative will be destroyed.
Yeah. And just brilliant. Just to add on to those 2 questions and answer them in this way, Hajj, to Black people, I would say this. The history of our struggle against oppression has always been tied into the international struggle of the Palestinian people, going all the way back to the days of Malcolm. We do not see this at the 5th Pan-African Congress in 1945 because there's no creation of Israel yet until 3 years later. However, we do see it later. We also see the pitting of the Zionists against the Black movement. It happened in the 1960s and early 70s with the Jewish Defense League against the New York chapter of the Black Panther Party. And Deborah Wahad explains this quite clearly. And guess who headed the New York chapter of at the time of the JDL? It was Bibi Netanyahu. This is not even a coincidence that their struggle and our struggle for liberation, when they see us rise up and try in our attempt to reach out to the Palestinian and the oppressed, they get in the way. And it's a reason for that. Because this marriage between the Arab and the movements against now colonialism and neocolonialism and the Black struggle has to take place. And that's what they fear. On the larger question, to answer your last question and to tie this into it, is that the West, particularly America, has a problem with, they've entered, and this has been going on at least 7 or 8 years, a problem with a global capital. They see the falling of their empire, right? Mm-hmm. Their construct of white supremacy is standing on a house of cards. Mm-hmm. Read the works of Paul Kennedy, The Rise and Fall of Empires. Their military, and look at the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense, and their budget vis-a-vis healthcare, education, streets and sanitation, infrastructure, and you will see that how bloated it is. ties directly into Paul Kennedy's work on this issue. They cannot get away from this. They are in a situation of desperation. That's what you see coming out of so-called Israel right now, and that's what you see coming out of the mouth of Joe Biden. We cannot play partners with them. And I'll leave you with this quote during the revolution, the Cuban Revolution, from a Black Cuban woman by the name of Nancy Mauri home. As us as activists, thought leaders, she said, the task of the intellectual is not to debate battles. It is to join them where the people have waged them. And it is clear all over the globe that the masses of the people have waged their struggle against Zionism and the existence of what's going on over in Palestine right now. Palestine has to have justice.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And you know something?
While we're in, Brother Saalakhan, not to be forgotten, we're in an Islamic revival.
Yes. Excellent.
Yeah.
While we're in an Islamic revival.
Islamic revival, yes, absolutely. And I just want to state for the record that, I agree with you, Amir Abdul Malik Ali. Hamas is a resistance movement, and it was freely elected by the Palestinian people to be the governing force. SubhanAllah, I look back and I think how sad it was that Fatah didn't do the right thing back then and say, well, we're going to go with the will of the people and we're going to give our unified support to who the people chose. I mean, I think that the situation would be far different had that happened. But with that being said, on the issue of violence, on the issue of terrorism, SubhanAllah, I'm sure that many will remember the 2019 Great March of Return. It was a nonviolent struggle.
Exactly.
Nonviolent Palestinians coming to the so-called fence, the apartheid wall. And they were met with unconscionable violence by the so-called Israeli Defense Forces. Live bullets. And they were target shooting. A lot of folks who got hit were hit in the head, were killed. SubhanAllah, they were taking target practice against unarmed Palestinians, men, women, and children, with many unarmed civilians shot again in the head. Now, my info says that 214 Palestinians were killed through that nonviolent struggle. All right. 214 Palestinians were killed, including 46 children. Over 36,000 were injured. Almost 9,000 of them being children. Now, SubhanAllah, man, this is, Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That 9,000 children, that is with what is taking place right now. But in terms of the what happened at the wall, there were 46 children that were killed. SubhanAllah. I mean, this is maddening. And this was a non-violent effort that was made. SubhanAllah. Now, with that being said, brothers and sisters, brothers and the viewing audience, we're going to stop now. And I thank both of you for being with us today. It's now we're at the hour. Inshallah ta'ala, I just want us to close out after the my customary recitation of Asr. I want to close out with some video showing the tremendous amount of support, awareness, and support and activism that is taking place not just in the United States, not just in a number of Arab countries, but literally around the world.
Unprecedented.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal Asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihat wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. which means in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good and exhort one another to truth and exhort one another to patiently persevere. The struggle must continue. Ameen.
Warning, you will experience the entire range of human emotions in this video. This is your chance to stop watching. Every genocide in history felt justified to its supporters. It didn't feel evil at the time. Its sinister nature was realized only in the haunting silence that followed. It always felt patriotic, deserved, necessary. But no such horrific event could ever take place without your support. Even your silence is a passive approval to the unfolding horror. However, the biggest challenge every extremist faces is your limitless capacity for humanity and empathy. Yet, there's a dark method able to hack your subconscious, turning off your strong instinct for compassion. Step 1, instill fear, igniting your survival instincts. Step 2, demonize the other, portraying them as less than human. Step 3, generalize and stereotype, spotlighting the few as a reflection of all, branding them as faceless devils, deserving nothing but murder. In this malicious mind hack, they turn your heart cold. They shut your humanity off. But there is a shield against this darkness. In fact, it's our only hope for peace and survival as a species. I urge you, in the moments that follow, to set aside any prejudice or stereotypes you may have. Allow yourself to experience, to immerse in what you're about to see. Trust me, switch your humanity back on. Allow yourself to feel. Feel every cut through the skin, the crushing weight of rubble, every scream of horror. Every death isn't just a number, it's dreams shattered, love lost, hope annihilated. Realize this, the key to peace.
I don't think I've ever seen this many people before. There's an estimated 300,000 people here. I've never seen any pro-Israeli march anywhere in the world that has anywhere close to these numbers. That tells you a story.
It is ethnic cleansing.
It's not just Muslims, it's not just Asians. I've seen every community here.
It's so moving as a Palestinian who's lived in Palestine and hasn't really seen this before. I mean, it's incredible.
Anyone with a conscience believes that a civilian population should never be punished in this way.
We are all Palestinians!
Shows you that the people stand for Palestine, while the governments, the politicians, and the media stand for the powerful. And I think that shows you all you need to know.